Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to another Mets Hot Stove Live right here on the channels, all of our channels. Mets Roundtable, 3/4 of the Roundtable crew is here, hanging out with you guys for another Mets Hot Stove or Cold Stove, whatever you want to call it. Just talking right before the stream. Basically, what's wrong with this offseason? Why are players making it so hard to figure out where they want to be? There's only 30 teams. And usually in a player, there's maybe the most 10 teams in on a player, and they still can't figure it out. You know, what they should do, they should lock them all in a cage and says, pick a team, pick a hat, and then we'll let you out. And that's what they should do. And we'll talk about what baseball needs to do to get the offseason a little bit more fun, active, like football, basketball, and even the NHL got better with their offseason when it comes to trades, free agency, and everything like that. But let's say what up to the round table right here. Nelson, how you doing, buddy?
What's up? Good to be back. It's been a little while. I took a little bit of a break. I needed it. It's freaking too much going on with the holidays, and this team drives me crazy anyway. Nothing's going on, and it seems like we're just repeating the same stuff over and over and over. So, but nice to be back. Hope everyone had a good holiday. Hope you guys had a good one, and let's talk some non-existent Mets news.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, content has been hard to come by if you're a Mets fan, for sure. If you're a Mets content creator, like you got to really dig deep to find content. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you having me back on, setting this up. Can you hear me all right? Making sure I have a mic check.
Sound good?
All right, sounds good. Yeah, I appreciate it. Good to be back on the round table. I know it's a little bit of a Mets cold stove season, so I took the opportunity to talk about Pete Alonso's contract extension that's looming on my channel today earlier on the True Mets Talk podcast. So make sure you guys check that out. Talked a little bit about these guys here that we're going to be talking at the top of the hour here with Manaya and Ryu as well. So all that good stuff on the channel. Thoroughly appreciate it. Good to see Nelson back here and his good-looking face on the round table. If only Hayden was here, we're just missing him. So I appreciate it, Rob. Thank you.
Absolutely. So again, we will all be together once again. Again, the holidays and just been crazy, and everybody has crazy schedules trying to work on their channels as well. So it's hard to get everybody together at the required time that we try to do this at, and try to be as consistent as possible so people can find the streams as well. So again, I know Till Mets Do Us Part is about to finish their stream. We were trying to avoid bumping heads with the stream, but again, we don't want to make the stream too late because, well, we got stuff to do, right? So we started this a little later just to give Till Mets Do Us Part a little bit of of the spotlight, so we don't take away any of their viewers. But we are here now, and we're going to talk about the latest news that we heard recently, and that the Mets are in on Sean Manaea and Hyun-Jin Ryu. And again, this is not going to excite the Mets fan base very much. I mean, they are solid pitchers. We heard about Sean Manaea and going into this lab or whatever the hell he's doing, that he got a couple of 2 or 3 miles an hour on his fastball. I'm concerned about Ryu, and I'll get obviously you guys' opinions, and I'll give my own afterwards. But Chris, I'm going to start with you. When it comes to Manaea and Ryu, if he had to choose one, because I don't think the Mets are going to go mediocre on 2 starting pitchers. I think they're going to get one middle rotation guy, and then probably go out in the trade market and do that as we get a little further in the stream. We'll talk about that. But Are you okay with the Minaya Ryu interest? And who would you want if it was only one of them?
Yeah, I'm good with it because honestly, the Mets need to add another lefty to this rotation, to be honest with you, to kind of pair up with Jose Quintana. So I'm good with Ryu or Manaya. I have a clear-cut favorite between the two. Understand that Ryu is a little bit more polished, a little bit more balanced pitcher, but I like Sean Manaya, and I truly do think the Mets should take a shot at Sean Manaya. Not only for that increased velocity, like you were mentioning, and I believe it went from 91, 92 miles per hour up to 97, 98. So
Yeah,
we're talking even more than 3 or 4 miles per hour on that fastball. I think it was the line drive or drive line lab that he went to, something of that nature. It's on X. Go check that out. I like Sean Manaya. He's versatile, appeared in 37 games for the San Francisco Giants last season. Only 10 games started, so he did come out of the bullpen as well. Has that fastball, four-seam fastball, throws it predominantly 55+% of the time. And he does have a nice little mix of off-speed pitches. Now, on the other hand, Ryu obviously is not going to wow you with the strikeouts. He's not going to wow you with the fastball. He has a lot more of a balanced arsenal, 5-pitch arsenal. So, like I said, I'm just rehashing everything I said in my video today. And when it all comes down to it, I really do want to take this chance on Sean Manaya because you have a rotation of Jose Quintana, who missed the first half of last season. Luis Severino on a prove-it-year deal is an unknown in terms of his injury history, right? Kodai Senga going into year 2, although he made great adjustments, this is only year 2 for Kodai Senga, and he probably is going to have to make more adjustments and continue to adjust to the MLB level play. So like I said, all those factors taken into consideration, that's why I like Sean Manaya. Bulk workload over the last 3 seasons has given each of those respective teams 100 to 115 innings plus in each of the last 3 seasons. And you cannot say the same thing for Hyun-Jin Ryu at all. 27 innings pitched in 2022 and 52 innings pitched in 2023. It's worrisome. I understand that he had a decent second half of the season coming back from Tommy John last season in 2023, but it is concerning. I'll say that. So everyone, in chat, everyone under my video has basically made the case for Hyun-Jin Ryu, and I understand that. I like the type of pitcher that he is. Like I said, he's not going to wow you like Sean Manaya is with the overpowering fastball, but he's a balanced pitcher, heavy ground ball usage, and definitely when you have guys like McNeil and Dorr out there, that's going to play to your strength, right? So that'll play for 2024. But like I said, I think this Mets rotation is needing that power type guy. Kodai Senga can get it up there, but honestly, consistently, Sean Manaya can be that from the left-handed side of the mound. So give me Sean Manaya when we're talking about the.
Absolutely. Nelson, same question, buddy.
Yeah, to me, it's a clear cut as well. Listen, Ryu doesn't really, he hasn't pitched since 2021, basically. He's barely pitched the last 2 years. He's a super soft tossing lefty. His average fastball is like 88 miles an hour, I believe. Manaya, even without the extra velocity from the pitching lab, is still better than that. Manaya is obviously 5 or 6 years younger at least. Just give me the guy that's actually pitched the last few seasons. I'll take him over a guy that hasn't pitched or a guy that's old. And I just don't have faith that he's going to bounce back and be good. Like he did show some good seasons, but it's been years. And Manaya was in his own right had some good seasons in Oakland as well. So he hasn't looked exactly great his last couple of years in I believe it was San Diego and San Francisco, his last 2 stops. But I like his stuff. I like what I hear about him going to wherever pitching lab or whatever the hell he was at. Just give me the guy that at least has shown me he can pitch the last couple of seasons. I'm not with trying to sign guys that I don't have any confidence that I can rely on, especially when this rotation is not good right now. It's really not. We need we need some reliability in that rotation. Not that this is the guy. I mean, if we just get Minaya, is I confident in this rotation? No, I feel like we definitely need someone else, but we got to start somewhere. So yeah, give me this guy and let's move. But at this rate, everybody that we're connected to ends up signing somewhere else within a day or two. So, or in some cases within hours. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end this stream and we get Sean Manaea went to whoever, the Chicago Cubs. I don't know. What it just that's just the way things have been working this offseason.
Yeah, and yeah. So you're saying, Nelson, is that we heard nothing on Montgomery, Snell, or Imanaga, so that means the Mets are going to get one of those guys, and the other guys that we've been hearing about are going to go somewhere else. So I mean, hey, let's play that game. I like that game.
Yeah, I mean, just today. I mean, I guess we're gonna talk about it. I see the topic on here, but yeah, Feinstein out of left field said that we're still interested in Snell, Montgomery, and Imanaga. That came out of nowhere after we've heard for weeks that we were kind of going to be out on those guys. So who the hell knows? Nobody knows anything. I've stopped basically listening to any of these writers. When the news happens and something actually goes down, then I'll comment on it. But these rumors are all way off base this offseason.
Yeah, I agree. I think these reporters have agendas. If they have a good relationship with a owner or a GM or a team, they'll find ways to throw the interest towards that player or players, and it becomes their opinion and their agenda instead of their reporting. And I think that's the biggest problem now. We don't know who to believe. I mean, we could say Will Salmon, Jeff Passan are probably the trusted reporters right now who are well above the other ones, but I want to, before we get into the next topic. I agree with you guys, Sean Manaea, 100%. I like that whole pitching lab thing where, again, we saw Jacob DeGrom do this, and I know I'm not comparing DeGrom to Manaea or Manaea to DeGrom, but remember, DeGrom ticked up 2 to 3 miles an hour more on his fastball within basically 2 years by basically changing his arm angle, changing his the way he winds up, and just more balance on his landing foot as well, and everything worked out to a couple miles per hour more on his fastball. And when a pitcher finds that and they can repeat it, Shohei is dangerous, and we already know he's a good pitcher. He pitched really well, and last year, if you look at his second half numbers, they were outstanding with the Giants. I mean, the Giants didn't do nothing in the second half, but he was outstanding. And that's something that you have to look at as well, where sometimes the pitcher just figures it out again, and he's young enough to figure it out. He's not a 36-year-old pitcher that you're hoping and praying like Ryu. Again, Nelson said it. When was the last time he pitched almost a full season? 2019? 2020 doesn't count. 2021, he was injured. He was good, but mostly injured. When he pitched, he was good, but you got to have him on the mound to pitch well. And then the last couple of years, he just wasn't good as well, and he didn't pitch. And that's a problem. I think the Mets need guys that go out there every fifth or sixth day and do what they need to do, and that's pitch. So I know people are crazy in the comments right now and talking about it, but we'll get to the comments. And guys, if you want to bring up any comments, please just stop me and shut me up to bring up a comment. But because my comment section is not working very well for some reason, it just stopped. So if you guys see it, that's great. So you can Chris.
One thing I wanted to say about Sean Manaea is just to your point and to back it up, like the 4.44 ERA in 2023 is what it is. But like you said, in the latter half of the 2023 season, he had one of the better FIPS overall in the National League. Like it was night and day difference. And I know a lot of people don't value FIP in comparison to ERA. It's an adjusted ERA based off of exit velocity, expectancy, and success rate. I understand that. But there is something to be said for that. Like he did look like a night and day type pitcher for the Giants in that latter half of the 2023 season. So absolutely great point there. And like I said, I don't think that it's absolutely necessary for the Mets to add a fireball type pitcher that can reach 97 or 98. But damn, watching this team and this rotation over the last couple of years, it sure would be nice. So that's why I would love this sort of fit for the Mets. And the last point I want to make here, if in case we're changing topics here, is that all three of us up here, and I don't want to speak for you guys, but I almost will because I think that we've already said it and rehashed it. we understand that these aren't going to be the moves that everybody wants. Like, we understand that. We've already accepted that. We're sitting up here and talking about the latest reports because at some point, the Mets do have to fill out a rotation with regardless of what the name is. They have to fill out the rotation. So we are just trying to give the most objective takes with what we have as information from all these reporters in terms of who they're going to sign, what they're willing to give as a contract, etc. We know that this isn't the most optimal offseason. I've already said it, got on record that this offseason is a complete 180 of what I expected in the beginning of the offseason. And it just is what it is. Like, I can't sit here and dwell over it as much as I'd like to. We just got to move on and sort of analyze this team in an objective light moving forward. So I just want to throw that little nugget out.
Yeah, and I agree. And we'll get to the second topic in just a second. But when it comes to these pitchers, and again, it's not it's not like the Mets didn't go after Yamamoto. They did. It's just that he chose elsewhere, right? So it's not like they weren't at the top of the pitching market. And again, even Steve Cohen said it in his quote after the Yamamoto sign with the Dodgers. You're not just going to pivot just to spend the money. Just because you were willing to give $325 to Yamamoto doesn't mean you got to give $200 million to Snell and $160 million to Montgomery and says, okay, we spent the money. There you go. I mean, now you're going to have a bunch of number threes in there that, could be a number two. Yes, Snell. I don't trust Snell at all. I don't consider him an ace because the way he pitches scares the hell out of me. But again, people would be more happy because they're names that are top of the list. Doesn't mean that they're going to be better pitchers, because Snell, if you really look at his career, his 2 Cy Young seasons was his best of his careers. Every other year is mediocre to subpar every other year. And one of those years was his free agent year, which was last year. So there's a lot to look in when it comes to that. And that's where I think, and I've been saying this for months now, and I know nobody likes Andy Martino. And when the only time I listen to Andy Martino is when he says something positive about the Mets' interest or what they might do in like a trade or looking for trades for whatever player, he has no way to flip it into a negative comment or opinion. And that's when I know that's when he's actually trying to be a reporter. Because on Mets Hot Stove yesterday, and I brought it up in one of my videos, that he said that, and this is the next topic now, Stearns is aggressively in the trade market for starting pitching. And he said, and Andy Martino said exactly this, it's not the Hauser type of pitcher. So what does that tell you? It's probably the Biebers, the Burns, the Ceases, the Castillos, those type of pitchers that I think he's going after, because why else give up prospects for guys who are not at the top of the starting pitching market and for trades? But Nelson, we're going to start with you here. I don't like Andy Martino. I don't think anybody else trusts Andy Martino, but when he says something positive, he can't spin it to a negative like he usually does. So that tells me that he heard something and he can't flip it into a negative, pro Yankee comment or opinion, or just negative Met comment. So Nelson, let me ask you, when it comes to the trade market, if Stearns is really aggressive in the trade market, and it doesn't matter with rental, because I think plans changed after Yamamoto went to the Dodgers, and I think they're probably more willing to give up a couple of prospects for a top line starter that is a top line starter, like the guys I mentioned. Where do you think the Mets are in the trade market pitching wise? Because it seems like it is top of the line starters they're going after.
Yeah, I've thought that if we got a top of the line starter, it was going to be after the Yamamoto stuff happened. It was going to be in the trade market. I don't have a problem with pivoting away from Snell and Montgomery. I personally think they're going to cost too much in years and money, and they're not aces. They're very good pitchers. They're not aces. To me, they're not worth the kind of contracts they're going to get. I keep seeing so many comments about Cohen and Stearns and this and that. Listen, Steve Cohen hired David Stearns to take over and really take the reins of this team. Like, I don't think he ever really had that much faith in Billy Epler or anybody else that was in charge since he's been here. Stearns has been the guy he wanted. And he's going to let Stearns do his thing. Like, Stearns has a plan. He told us that. He told us there was a plan A with Yamamoto. That fell through. I think if we had signed Yamamoto, things look very different this offseason, but we didn't. So now we have to pivot to plan B. And I think plan B is spend money wisely. And if you can get a top tier pitcher in the trade market, you do it. And I'm glad that he's being aggressive. If that's true, obviously these freaking reports, you never know, but I really do believe he's proved in Milwaukee. The guy makes good trades. He's got an eye for talent. The Hauser trade and the Hauser and Tyrone Taylor trade is very underrated. Like that was an excellent trade. So I know it's taking more time than people want. I know it's not the way everybody big game hunting. Everybody wanted the big names. I tried to tell people, unless it was Yamamoto, like I didn't really think we were going to get any of these huge free agents, but everybody wanted to say, "Oh, Cohen's a billionaire. Cohen's a billionaire. We're going to sign everybody." Well, here we are. That's not the case. So I don't know who the guy is. I really don't. I wish I knew. Is it Burns? Is it? I would love it if it were Cease. Is Seattle looking to trade one of their guys? I don't know. I heard rumors they're having some money issues over there. And it could be anything. It could be something we don't see at all coming because that's how the Mets tend to roll. That's how Stearns. I mean, we didn't see that Hauser trade coming. I just really think that this is the way to go. Hopefully they can line up that trade for a top of the rotation guy, and then we won't. I feel like that'll settle some people down because right now you look at this rotation, it looks like crap. I can't argue that. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. It's not pretty, but that can change, and I think that's what people like. The offseason isn't over. As much as it feels like nothing's happening, we still got time. Things are happening behind the scenes. Nobody likes to be patient, but that's what has to happen. We have to just have some faith here because really we have no other choice other than bitch and moan and complain, which, I mean, that's well within your right if that's what you want to do. But to me, it's just wait and see, take a wait and see approach. I really do feel this team is going to be in position. I'm not even just going to say competitive. I'm going to say they're going to be in position to make a playoff spot. I really do feel that. Like deep down, like they're not, I don't think they're going to win 90, 100 games, but can they win mid to upper 80s and sneak in a wild card? I think at the end of the day, when this roster is fully built, I think that's the level of team we're going to be looking at.
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you. And again, like you said, the Hauser move was very underrated. Not enough people are giving Stearns credit. I mean, he basically got a rotation arm that's a pro's pro that will give you a start every fifth day, which the Mets lacked last year a lot of, and Tyrone Taylor, who can play every outfield position, gives you speed, has a little bit of pop in his bat, and that was also what the Mets were lacking last year as well. Once they had injuries, they were in trouble. And I think that's the thing that we don't really talk about enough. And you're right about the playoff situation. The Mets had one bad month, really bad month, and that was June. And that was with a rotation that never was healthy to go through the rotation once throughout the whole season. That's a big deal. I mean, we didn't start our rotation off right on opening day. And we still won 75 games. When everybody's like, "Oh, we're gonna be a 75 win ball club." Well, then why weren't they a 55 win ball club last year? Because after June, when June happened, they could have crumbled. And if you look at the rest of the months that they played, they were around 500 or a little bit better or a little bit worse. They weren't that far from being an average 500 team. They went again. They had a 500 June. They would have been right in the mix where the Cubs and the Diamondbacks were for the third wildcard spot, the 83 to 85 win team, just by having a 500 June. And that's all you need. You need to be a 500 team if you're not one of the top level teams. And I did this in the streams about a week ago. I said it. Look at all the teams that are not the Braves, Dodgers, and let's put the Milwaukee Brewers in the Central. Every one of those other teams are within 7 to 10 games that are in fighting for wild card spots. The Mets are in that mix. They're not that far behind. And people are like, oh, the Marlins are going to be better. Possibly. But the Marlins do what the Marlins do. Remember, they're losing Soler. They don't have Alcantara for the whole season. That is huge. And I'll speak about the DH a little later. But yeah, Chris, let me get your opinion about the trade market. And I've said this for a while. I think it's going to happen. I think if plan A was Yamamoto, plan B was definitely the trade market, because I don't think they like Montgomery Snell enough to give him that much money. Even if the starting pitcher is a rental, you're still getting a top line starter who's looking for a big contract, which is most of the time very good news, because they're trying to pitch at their best to get a big contract. And if the Mets are a team that are hovering around, not really that good, they can trade them at the deadline to get more assets. People don't talk about that either. They just see player good, great. Player bad, oh shit, we suck. They don't look at the fact that they can move these guys at the deadline. That's why moving assets isn't the worst thing in the world, because if he is great for you, well, you're probably going to have a better season. And if he's not, and the team's not doing well, and he's doing well, you get to trade him as an asset. So, Chris, what do you think about the starting pitcher market that apparently Stearns is being aggressive in the starting pitcher market?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Before I get into the starting pitching market, Ethan put a comment up here saying that Starling Marte singled in his first at bat in winter ball, which is obviously good to see. There's a little bit of Starling Marte update. But anyways, starting pitching market, listen, I'm not going to go out there and talk about, a Castillo sort of trade from the Mariners. Passan was sort of taking a dig at the Mariners a couple days ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, just sort of speculating why they don't add on to that already pretty decent roster, whether they're having money issues or not. I don't think the Mets are going to pull a deal for a Castillo type pitcher. Shane Bieber is another name that we've talked about. I don't think it's going to happen. He's on the decline. He's going to have an arbitration year here in 2024 before he hits free agency in 2025. He's off the books. A name like Lauer, who had a lousy season and only, I think, 10 games started for the Brewers last season and had a great 2021 and 2022 with a little bit more of a sample size, is, I guess, a little bit more of an option. But we've been talking about Dylan Cease here for quite some time. So I'm still all eyes on Dylan Cease. Carlos in the chat here is talking about Corbin Burns. I know that's your guy as well, Rob. I just don't know if they're going to go after those ace-type guys this offseason. That obviously Luis Castillo has a whole deal attached to him, but a Corbin Burns who's going to hit the open market. Now, I know things change, plans change. You've given your reason as to why that might happen. I definitely agree with you. Like, if there's an opportunity to swindle some sort of low-level deal, because let's face it, if the Brewers themselves want pitching back, then it's not going to happen, because the Mets, for the same reason, probably they didn't pursue Juan Soto with the lack of pitching. They're not going to pursue a Corbin Burns if Milwaukee wants those young, youthful pitchers back. But that's in any case. We're not going to talk about the type return that they want. I think it's feasible. I don't think it's going to be those top-level guys that we've been talking about, but it's certainly feasible to sort of be active on the trade market. And like Nelson said, this offseason isn't done. I'm gonna save my full judgments in terms of grading this team in terms of the win-loss record that we're gonna see in 2024 until we see how the rest of the season shakes out. Now, other guys that might be on the table in terms of the trade market, you take a look at the Seattle Mariners again, taking away Luis Castillo. Their 2, 3, and 4 options in Logan Gilbert, Bryce Miller, and who's the other guy? Who's the third guy in that rotation? Can anyone help me out? Does anyone know off the top of their head? Because I completely forgot. Those 3 options I would not be mad at. That's whatsoever. And those are a little bit more realistic, to be honest with you. Mitch Keller is a lower end guy, in my humble opinion. But he's also an option too if the Mets want to play a little bit more money ball. Not to have any disrespect that Mitch Keller or anything like that. He's just not the type of name like Castillo or Cease or Burns, with all due respect. So did you pull up that name, Rob? Because it's eating at me.
Yeah, I'm trying to look at it right now.
It's Logan, it's Castillo, Gilbert, someone, and then Bryce Miller at the end of that. So whoever that. No. That's their fifth starter.
Emerson Hancock.
No.
Robbie
Honestly,
Ray,
hold on.
that's all they're on their depth chart right now.
Robbie Ray's the only other guy.
No, there's one other guy that I'm missing here.
Yeah, I only see
Anyway,
like
George Kirby, Bryce
Kirby. Okay,
Miller, and Logan Gilbert. Yeah, George Kirby. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So any one of those three is certainly a play. Logan Gilbert's probably my favorite of those three, but any of those three would do to fit into this 2024 Mets rotation. And Rob, you made a great point here in terms of collecting assets, regardless if it's going to happen in the near future in this offseason or if it's already happened. Especially with these bullpen type guys that teams are going to be calling for if they have a great first half of the season. That's a very underrated point. And to sum this all up, just in terms of the trade market, etc., I tie this all back to a great tweet that Nelson tweeted out earlier today on his X account. Shout out to Nelson, and taking a look at the Mets' projected total salary cap after the 2024 season compared to the 2024 season. It doesn't make sense to tie yourself up to Jordan Montgomery, who's going to want ace-type money, Blake Snell, who's going to demand ace-type money, or even a Shota Imanaga right now, who's going to want that 5-year contract north of $100 million, which is a lot more than what his original market was set at. So I think trades are on the table. David Stearns has showed a willingness in Milwaukee to sort of go after those trades. I'm just not convinced it's going to be those top-of-the-line guys until the Mets prove otherwise to me. So that's what I got. A couple names out there. The Seattle Mariners, though, not a bad team to look at if you're looking at a trade partner for starting pitching, because they got 3 realistic guys in that rotation to go at.
yeah, and maybe we can fleece Dipoto like he tried to fleece us with the Diaz Cano deal a couple years back. So all right, let's start off with the other topic that we're going to talk about. And Imanaga, again, he's only got what, 8? It's going to be 7 days to sign with a team before he has to go back to Japan. And it's weird that that he's getting so close to the date, and there's really nothing about him yet. No, has he met with teams yet? I mean, we're a couple of days, past the new year. Like, what the hell is going on with Imanaga? And Nelson, I'm going to start with you with Imanaga. I put the topic: are the Mets? Is the radar signal on Imanaga still? Are they willing to go 5 years, 85 to 100 million for Imanaga? Because a lot of talk now that it's going to go north of $100 million with another Japanese pitcher. I don't know if there's Imanaga still on their radar, but I think they're going to be one of the last couple of teams in on them, and I think they're probably going to pull out once that number gets north of $100 million. What do you think, Nelson?
I have no clue. We were talking before the stream started. It seems like for whatever reason, all these Japanese guys just want to sign in California. So my best guess, he signs up with one of those teams. For Christ's sake, it might be the freaking Dodgers again, because the Dodgers seem to get everybody on a I'll owe you later deal. I'll give you $1 million this year and $100 million 20 years from now. I don't know. I wasn't against an Imanaga move in the beginning. At this point, if the strategy is to try to not spend big and try to save that money for next year, I'm almost out on it. Like I'd rather, if he's gonna get north of $100 million, if he's gonna get 5, 6, 7 years, like I almost rather just pass. If he comes cheaper than that, and it's not as much as they seem to be indicating, then sure, I guess we could take a flyer on it. I just don't see it at this point. I don't know. Even I have trouble trusting these reporters. I don't know where Feinstein pulled this out of, that after we've been hearing nonstop that the Mets were not going to be in on Snell, Montgomery, and Imanaga, all of a sudden he pulls this report out that we are still in on them. He's the only one that I noticed saying that, unless I missed something. To be honest, unless I hate to give Martino credit, but unless Martino, Salmon, guys that are more connected with the team say something like that, I'm kind of hesitant to believe it, just because the one dude that's really been on this offseason and been right for the most part is Will Salmon from The Athletic.
Yep.
So I tend to believe what he says more than anything else. So if he says we're still in on these guys, then I'll buy it a little more. I don't know. At this point, I don't see it. I think, as we talked about, I think the trade market is the route to go, and then maybe we do sign another back end guy like a Manaya. Hopefully not Ryu, but maybe Ryu. So yeah, I don't see it. I could be off base. I just don't see it. I'd rather save that money and figure it out next year, man. At this point, as Chris mentioned in that tweet I did, our estimated payroll after taxes is already at $283 million. We're probably easily going to clear 300 after all is said and done. I really think the Mets are trying to not, if they can, try to not go too crazy over that number. And listen, the team, I don't know. I just don't think this team is in as bad a shape as people seem to think. Yes, the rotation doesn't look good, but there's other factors. There's guys in the minors. There's guys that are gonna play this year a full season that didn't play last year a full season. If by some miracle, if we get 2022 Starling Marte instead of whatever that garbage was last year, that changes the lineup instantly. So
Yeah.
this team can be good. I really do believe that. Are we spending that money on a Imanaga? I don't think so, but I don't know. It seems that everything we think is gonna happen, the opposite happens. So who the hell knows?
Yeah, and I tend to agree with you on that part. And yeah, and the whole thing, like again, we do act like this team going into last season wasn't a 101 win team. Yeah, it was a disaster at the end, but they still were, right? Besides the rotation being extremely well, which we all forget, what rotation, it wasn't really a healthy rotation in 2022 either. I mean, Chris Bassett was the only one that was actually pitching every fifth day in that rotation, and Walker. Other than that, it was Scherzer getting hurt, being out for 6 weeks, getting hurt again. DeGrom was out half the season. It was David Peterson and McGill. That was the rotation for the majority, almost for what, 4 months of the season. We forget about that. And if Marte is half of what he was in 2022, that's automatically better than what we had last year. We all assume the DH is going to be better. We know Francisco Alvarez is probably going to be really damn good, and we forget about those 25 plus home runs that can add to this team as well. We had a down McNeil, a down Alonso average wise, and if Nimmo and Lindor do exactly what they did last year, that's automatically a better lineup than we had last year. Not including that, what if Beatty or Vientos show a little more something offensively? And who knows what left field, but say if left field ends up being Tyron Taylor, he can be better or at least on par with what Canna brought in 2022. That's very similar than what we saw in 2022. So, look, it's a lot of ifs. We all know that. But, Chris, Imanaga, Mets on the radar, I want to bring up your comment in the chat about starting pitching. We're going to go through the same problem next year, even though the class for starting pitching is a lot better. But guess what? There's going to be a lot of teams after that starting pitching as well. And that's not including signing Pete Alonso. That's not including going after hard for Soto. So that's about $500 to $600 million just on those guys. And you have to put a whole new rotation together next year if you're going to get these 1-2-year deals for these pitchers. And if you do get a rental in a trade, your whole rotation is Kodai Senga and Hauser next year. Actually, no, Hauser's a free agent.
Hauser's gone too. So
yeah, it's Senga, and that's it. So it's back next year where you got to sign 2 or 3 guys at top level market, and you're back in the same situation. So that was a great point for you in the chat. But what do you think about Imanaga on the Mets radar?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I would still, if I'm the Mets, be in on Imanaga just so you can fill in that spot. Even if he's going to get $20 to $21 million, that's something that you have to eat, in my humble opinion, unless you're going to go all out in the trade market. And even then, you're going to have to make a trade for a starter of whatever caliber this year. And if the Phillies go out and re-sign Zach Wheeler, which I think they will, right? He's 35 years old anyways, regardless. Max Fried, do we realistically think he's leaving the Braves with how they work their voodoo magic in terms of extensions for their players? Do we really think that Garrett Cole, I mean, he might opt out of that $36 million option with the Yankees, but is he going to come to the Mets? Absolutely not, in my humble opinion. So, what are the realistic options on the trade or on the free agent market in 2025? You have Corbin Burns. You will have Shane Bieber that you can take a stab at, maybe on a bargain deal, even though he's on the decline. And then maybe an older Kyle Hendricks that'll be 35 years old. That's, I guess, been pretty solid for the Cubs as of recent, even still given his age. So, like I said, in the comment section, I said it, the Mets are still going to have this problem unless they foresee themselves adding – unless they foresee Luis Severino having a killer year and them having the first rights to re-sign him, that'll alleviate some pressure off them. But if he stinks it up, right, that's going to be a problem. Quintana's going to leave. You're not going to re-sign him. Nobody wants Quintana in this team next year with the way that this offseason should go in 2025. They're going to have the same problem. So that's why, like, Snell and Montgomery, I understand not going for that 6-7 years. But Imanaga, if you can steal him even for a little bit above market price at $21 million for the 5 years that he wants, is there any downside to that, to be honest with you? I mean,
No.
I can't see it, to be honest with you. I cannot see it. So I'm just sort of trying to speculate. I'm not looking at only 2024. I'm looking forward at problems that the Mets are going to have, taking into account the free agent market next season. So, like I said, unless there's any names that fit the Mets' bill more than the names I just mentioned in the 2025 starting pitching market, then by all means, please correct me. But this is going to be an issue. The same issue that we have this year is going to be an issue next year. So that's what I got. And Imanaga, like everyone said, Jeff Passan reported north of $100 million. If the Mets really were willing to go ahead and sign Imanaga, it would have been done already. I truly feel like that would be the case. They'd overpay him at this point, and they'd blow him away with an offer. I understand he hasn't sort of met with any teams yet, this, and that, but he would be a Met at least within the week. I firmly believe that. But like Nelson said, Will Salmon went on Anthony Rivera's podcast, Subway to Shea, and basically told everybody. He told me, at least in my comment that I made to him about a potential Imanaga signing, saying, don't expect that to happen. The Mets are not in any sort of position to give anybody, whether it's a starting pitcher or it's a position player, anything north of 3 years. And Imanaga is not taking anything less than 3 or anything, less than 3.
Yeah.
Hell, he might not even take less than 4. So,
and that's pretty much why I don't think he's coming here, because if that's truly the case, then it's just not happening. I think we've talked about it. And nobody wants to rely on these kids, but I think next year part of what they're looking for is to hit on one of these kids in the minor leagues. You have Christian Scott, you have Mike Vassell. Tidwell will be close. Like Scott and Vassell for sure in 2025 should be ready. I gotta believe that they are hoping. I don't know if they're banking on it, but they are hoping that at least one of those guys is a mainstay in that rotation. Now, you still have other holes to fill, but I think if that's the case, if you can get at least one of those guys to hit, then obviously that puts them in a way better spot. That's a cost-controlled pitcher that you don't have to spend a ton of money on. So I think part of this season, and I've said it in my videos, is evaluating these kids. They have to know going forward what the plan is, because they're not going to hold on to every single one of them. It's not realistic. So they have to evaluate, and they have to figure out who they want to keep, who they trust to be on the roster, and who they just want to move on from. Yeah. So I think part of that, and part of maybe not filling every single hole, is they want to try to evaluate some of these kids. So I know it's not the popular move. I know it's not what everybody wants, but it has to be done. This is David Stern's first year with this team. He has to see for himself what he has. He didn't make these moves for these guys. So he needs to know firsthand what he has and what he's got to work with. So that's just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, Chris,
Sorry,
yeah.
Rob. I just wanted to go real quickly because I completely forgot a point that I wanted to make on the last topic. Freddie Peralta from the Brewers, a name that I've mentioned before on this podcast. Keep an eye on him as well. He had a controllable years. Milwaukee Brewer has a Stearns connection. Could be a name to sort of look out for. And Carlos said it here as well. I believe he said somewhere in the comment section. I just wanted to bring it to light. Another reason to look at Brandon Woodruff. Comment that I put in there. If Brandon Woodruff has any sort of medical opinions out there from doctors that he could be good to go. And I know it's hard to speculate with the shoulder injury that he sustained, but being a top 10 pitcher that he is, if you can sign and stash him for 2025 to sort of alleviate some pressure off you in the situation that I just mentioned, 3-4 minutes ago, it makes all the sense in the world. But that's a huge if, Carlos. Great idea. It's a huge if that, I think it's a shoulder capsule injury. What the Till Mets Do Us Part boys have been saying that forgot who suffered it in their careers too. But yeah, it's a really hard injury to come back from. But upside is there. It's there.
Yeah, and it goes back to the same thing about what Nelson said about they're hoping a Scott, a Tidwell, a Vaso, Hamill, whichever guy, Stewart, whichever one of those guys. I think they're really hoping that this year in the minors, one of those guys step up to be all world and just be like, wow, this guy can be a one or a number two. And then the Mets really have something cooking here because then, you got Senga, you got one of the prospects that are in the top line of the rotation. Now you only need another top pitcher, if that's Burns, if that's Bieber, whoever they choose in the free agent market, Walker Buehler, one of those guys that are another top line guys. You only need one instead of two. That is huge. And you're right about Woodruff. That shoulder capsule is dangerous. I forgot the player. He actually tweeted something. I should have retweeted. I'm an idiot for not doing it. But it was a pitcher that was a pretty good pitcher in his during his time. He had the shoulder capsule injury. He tweeted that he was never the same, and he was 33 at the time when it happened. Now, Woodruff is a couple of years younger, so you hope that makes it better, but the velocity wasn't there anymore. He had his breaking stuff, his off-speed punch stuff, but his fastball, which Woodruff is around, 96, 97, dropped off between 3 and 4 miles an hour, and it was never back again. So that's what you worry, because if he can't pitch without that high-velocity fastball, he's just another average pitcher. So, but I would still go after bringing Woodruff for 2 years just in case he comes back to form. But yeah, and that's why I think the Mets are going after a guy who might be a rental in the trade market because of the fact I don't think they want to give 4+ year deals to any of these guys. But I believe, Chris, you said it. I don't see the downfall in signing Imanaga or Montgomery, not necessarily Snell, but even Snell, I'll put in that mix. We have to remember, we act like they're only pitching in 2024 and they're going to fall off the face of the earth. Even if you are transitioning in 2024 and evaluating a lot of these guys are still going to be here in 2025. That's one less pitcher you have to go after in the free agent market. And they might actually turn out to be very good. And I just don't understand the fact when people are like, oh, we're punting on 2024. Why sign Montgomery or Snell or Imanaga? Well, they're going to be here in 2025 regardless. So that's why that argument makes no sense that I see people making on Twitter. And that goes for other guys like a Dylan Cease or a Luis Castillo who have contracts for at least another year or two, or at least in Castillo's case, 4 or 5 years. I understand the Burns and the Bieber and those type of guys, but if you really are transitioning in 2024, those guys are going to be here that you're going to sign for multi-year deals. So that already makes no sense, and I agree with you, Chris. It's weird to me that people talk about like these guys are going to just fall off the face of the earth, and then the contracts are just going to get ripped up and go bye-bye. Like, it makes no sense to me. All right. Let's get to the DH. Oh my freaking God, the DH. Can we get a DH? Can we get somebody who is actually, competent at DH that can hit 20 plus home runs and be a run producer for once? I want to bring this up because Passer wrote this on ESPN's his article. According about Jorge Soler, I know Martinez is on the topic, but we all like Jorge Soler for the most part. I think power wise, everything else is kind of like, But he said that Soler's having a hard time getting a 3-year deal. Remember, he got a 3-year deal for the Marlins, but it was a 1-year opt out. It's hard for him to find a 3-year deal right now. And I'm a little shocked by that because I thought he can easily get a 3-year deal, but I think he opted out on the premises that he was going to get another 3-year deal guaranteed. And the reason why I think he opted out was because it's only $13 million contract per year. I think he's looking up north of like $15, $16 million, maybe even closer to 18, around that mark. If you can get him on 2 years, throw Martinez out the window, throw Turner out the window. Jorge Soler with his 36 home runs, that's run production. I'm not a big home run guy. I like more of a guy that's a 20-plus home run guy that can, do other things to produce runs other than just home runs. I know he's mostly a home run guy and mostly a big strikeout guy with a low average. But if you can get Jorge Soler in a 2-year deal, the hell with Turner, Chris, and the hell with Martinez. Because Soler is the guy to get if you can get him on 2 years.
Yeah, and like you just said, it sort of was weird to think about a type of Jorge Soler contract and sort of speculate on it. And now it's good that we're getting these reports that he's sort of having it's not good for him, right? It's not good for him, but it's good for the Mets' case in case they want to engage in negotiations with him. And that contract that he signed with the Miami Marlins was very weird. It was a very weird contract, especially given the type of production he gave the Atlanta Braves in that sort of World Series run that he had in 2021. It was a weird contract. I can foresee him probably at this point, if he does struggle finding a solidified 3-year deal, pivoting to a similar type deal that he took with the Marlins just for a higher AAV. Maybe you're looking at 3 years, an opt-out after the second, a team exercise opt-out after the second, or a 2-year deal with the player opt-out after the first. Something along that range, which plays a lot more into the Mets' strength this offseason than anything beyond that. So, absolutely, we've been talking highly of Jorge Soler's power upside, especially if you plug in those 30 to 35 home runs, even 40 home runs right behind Pete Alonso. Absolutely scary 4-5 duo there, or 3-4 duo, however you want to play the lineup, and however Mr. Mendoza plays the lineup. But absolutely, if that doesn't work out, I think we pretty much know Teoscar Hernandez is not on the horizon. He's more likely to get a Starling Marte type deal for 4 years. Although you never know at this point, like Nelson said, things just happen to get thrown in our faces out of the loop, and stranger things do happen. But JD Martinez, if Soler is truly out, and he is able to get that longer term deal in 3 years, and the Mets are out on him, I think JD Martinez is probably one of the better options. But I still, like, when you talk about Justin Turner and JD Martinez, I still might have to lean with Justin Turner, to be honest with you, because honestly, at the same rate, you might have the same problem in signing JD Martinez, being a little bit younger than Justin Turner and coming off of what? I think he was an all-star last season as well with the Dodgers. So he might be asking for the same type of deal, 3 years, given that he's only 35, 36 years old, and Justin Turner's 39. So when you take a look at that, obviously it's all contingent on the type of contracts and the type of sort of market that these players are surrounding themselves in terms of what they're asking for these teams. And that's why I think Justin Turner, even if we haven't heard of any sort of reports and the Mets talking to Justin Turner in the recent couple of weeks, it wouldn't surprise me if we start to hear murmurs of those negotiations starting to pick back up after they've done their due diligence on a Jorge Soler or a JD Martinez. So that's how I would best sort of situate the DH market. But you'd be surprised, Nelson and Rob, how many people on my YouTube channel, how many people on X are clamoring for Mark Vientos to be the everyday DH in 2024. And honestly, the flip side of the table, if this is a transition year, why not give Vientos that everyday shot at the DH spot? I mean, why not at this point? So there is two sides of the fence, and I do understand both sides of that fence. But if we're talking about purely putting the best put together team and potentially making one of those, couple wild card spots down the stretch in 2024, you have to go with a solidified veteran. You can't leave that up to Mark Vientos.
Yeah, I agree. And Nelson, that passing article is kind of interesting to me. And it's coming off of the Turner situation with the Mets, where you heard a ton of noise with him a couple of weeks ago prior to the holidays, and then it just went dead silent on Turner. And then it kind of pivoted a little bit to Martinez news, but not as much as we thought. And I wonder if the Soler news, teams are starting to really realize that Jorge Soler is not going to, nobody wants to give him a 3-year deal. And I think if you can get him on a 2-year deal, hey, you know what? Maybe even sweeten the deal a little bit with a 30-year option. If he has 2 good years, pop in that 30-year option, that player option, which players seem to like, because, I mean, that's how they got Scherzer with that 30-year option. I think players really like that other option, because if they don't have a good second year, they can just take that option and make that money elsewhere and not lose out on some salary. But Nelson, what do you think about that? What do you think is the best fit if you had a choice? And would you go after Soler if it is 2 years?
Yeah, so I did a video podcast today on my channel, basically comparing where our offense sits now to where it was last year. And I said it in this video, I've said it since the offseason began. Our two positions that we really need to figure out on the offensive side have been DH and left field. I would like to get both. I don't know if that's going to be actually happen. Maybe we'll just get one or the other. But to me, DH is probably the most important one. We saw how bad Vogelback was last year. The year prior, he was solid, but the right side of that platoon was a black hole with Ruff. And before Ruff, we didn't have anybody. It was just junk. So DH is definitely a spot where we can upgrade. And I honestly, I like any of these guys. I don't live in a planet where I believe Martinez and Turner are going to replicate their numbers last year necessarily, but I think they are good enough where they can be pretty darn good and they can still help this offense. Anything is going to be an upgrade over our DH situation last year. If you can get Soler on a 2-year deal, I'm all over it. I don't know if that's necessarily going to happen, but yeah, if his market's not playing to what he thought it was going to be and that we can get him for that, then yeah, definitely sign me up.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to complain if we get any of those guys. I really think any of those 3 guys would be a huge upgrade to the offense. DH and left field, like I said, those are the 2 positions where we can really make a difference and make a stride compared to last year. Besides obviously McNeil improving it and Alonso having a little bit of a better year. So this offense isn't as bad as some like to think. And it's not out of the realm of possibility that Brett Beatty turns it around. Like, it can happen. So as far as Vientos, listen, I get fans like him. I feel like a lot of that is coming from falling in love with that last month of the season, because honestly, outside of that, he was garbage. So I don't know. To me, I find it hard to invest in September numbers because we see crazy stats in September all the time. Teams aren't necessarily always throwing their best guys out there. Some guys are pitchers that are getting call-ups from the minors. It's just, I don't know. I'd love to believe that Vientos is it. If that's where we end up going with it, I'm not going to yell and scream about it, but I don't know. I personally can't buy into that last month. And I think that if you have an opportunity to really improve at the DH position and get somebody from the outside, And if one of those three guys, Martinez, Soler, and Turner, are it, you have to pounce on it. This is a move you got to make. Besides, obviously, the needs in the rotation, like fixing this DH spot, it has to happen, in my opinion.
Yeah, and you know, if you follow Stearns, and most of us do, he loves power. He loves defense and power. That's one thing that he always had with the Brewers. Guys that might not hit a lot for average, but he loves the power. And again, I don't think anybody would complain. I think Met fans are so desperate for a signing that is a name that people know, at least, you know, normally, like a Turner, Martinez, Soler. I think they would just be happy with one of those guys, because I think every one of them brings something to the table that the Mets need, right? Martinez brings that protection and power that Pete Alonso needs in this lineup, and that would be, you know, a hell of a lot of help. Justin Turner, I said this for a while, Chris, I agree with you. Justin Turner brings more than just the bat. And what I always liked about Justin Turner was that he's a run producer that doesn't rely on the home runs to produce those runs. And on top of that, he can spell Alonso at first base every now and then. And if Beatty or Vientos don't work out at third base, Turner can play third base. He can. I think he played about 20 plus games, maybe more than that actually, at third base. Because I know he played a lot with Boston. He played at third base because I know Devers was there, but he played a decent amount at third base as well when Devers wasn't playing. You know, when they gave Devers a day off on the field, he played, I think, about 20 something games at third base. He can do that still. I'm not saying Turner's got to play 100 games at third base, but if Beatty and Vientos don't work out, you know, and the Mets are waiting until, you know, after the deadline to bring up an Acuna, maybe give an opportunity there, then Turner can spill that. And you know, he's a professional who still can play decent defense. And Soler, again, another guy is protection for Alonso. Again, I don't think Turner is the protection that you really necessarily want to protect Pete Alonso, but he's a guy that, again, doesn't strike out a lot. And he's a gap-to-gap hitter. And I love guys that can produce runs in other ways, just home runs. I'm sick and tired of seeing guys swing for the fences with 2 strikes, not slow down there, swing a little bit, and hit the ball the other way. That shit pisses me off. And we saw the Mets, a lot of them last year, including Alonso, who, even though he had 40-plus home runs, he is a guy that, when Pete Alonso is on, is hitting balls to right center, hitting balls in the gap. That Pete Alonso was so good in 2022 because he was batting that 260 average. He was getting bat on ball. He wasn't striking out looking just for the home run. I like Justin Turner a hell of a lot more. I know the age is a problem, but it's what we need right now is a guy who can, because I'll tell you right now, if the Mets do get Martinez, if this guy doesn't hit home runs, look at the seasons where he doesn't hit home runs. The run production is not there. So you basically got Vogelback numbers, 16 to 20 home runs with 60 RBIs. Martinez did that a couple of years ago. That scares me because if he don't hit the home runs, he can't play the field. So he's basically a guy with no position. And if he doesn't hit the home runs, he's not a run producer. And that's what scares me, Chris or Nelson, whatever. Anybody wants to bring up anything else with that?
Yeah. No, NY committee said it the best. In terms of this offseason, Justin Turner, of the 3, I think is the best fit for this team in 2024. If you have to give him that second year, if that's an absolute must, a deal breaker for him, he becomes an automatic great bench bat for you in 2025. But I think it is the best fit for the New York Mets there. And I love what you said about the opposite field hitting. That's something I've stressed, especially with Pete Alonso. Night and day difference when you see him hitting the ball the opposite field and even over that right center field wall. Pete Alonso's on a different playing field. And then I think Gums here in the comments said, how do we learn about Vientos if we don't play him? You know what? If you take a look at any of our Interstate Mets Report streams, I basically said from the very top that I don't see Vientos as a long-term fit for the New York Mets, regardless of what his upside may be. I never saw it, and I don't think that's still the case. I don't think he's going to be a Met for long, and that's just a simple matter of the fact. However much you like him is a different story. If you're a Vientos fan, I got nothing against the kid either. I just don't think he's a fit for the New York Mets moving forward, and I've always...
Yeah, and I think the positionless part of a player, I don't think Stearns likes at all. You know, that's the reason why they didn't tender Vogelback a contract. You know, that's the reason why they tendered DJ Stewart, because he's versatile. Stearns loves versatility. again, Vientos is not versatile. He's a DH. And if he hits, he's a DH because he can't play the field well at all. We saw his terrible footwork at first base. He's really not a third baseman, in my opinion. So, again, he don't hit. Again, maybe he will. But again, can you trust that? Maybe for 2024. But if you don't work out then what do we do? We're going to talk about Martinez and Turner and Jorge Soler or those type of bats again at DH because we can't keep on doing this every year. You got to find somebody that's going to fit at least for the next couple of years. Nelson, what do you think about that before we get into the left field options?
Yeah, no, to me, Turner is probably, I've said it on the Interstate Mets Report, probably my number one pick out of those guys. But like I said, any one of them would be an upgrade. I'm not going to – beggars can't be choosers, right? Like, we need
Correct.
somebody. So whoever will take that 1 to 2 year deal at the right money, bring them on in. I get people like Vientos. I do. I don't see it, man. I see – in a sense, I see the same thing with Stewart. A lot of people love see DJ Stewart and say, "Oh, look at all these." He had a nice run where he hit some homers, but
He's
outside of a very hot stretch, he wasn't very good either, and he never has been. So I think people got to be careful with falling in love with these little flashes of very good baseball because you got to look at the overall picture. And yes, I get Vientos hasn't had a lot of playing time. But when he did, outside of that September, he just hasn't been good. So I have trouble having faith in that. If they choose to go that route, fine. I would rather see a signing of one of those three guys, preferably Turner. But
yeah,
just because of that, he does. I do think Stearns values versatility, like you said. He's the one guy out of that bunch that I think plays the field better than all of them. And having a guy that just doesn't play the field and only can DH, that's tough. It's tough to carry that on the roster.
Yeah. And you know what? And look, fans, and I know this is going to piss up a lot of Met fans, but baseball fans in general, they love the unknown because it could be better than what you currently have, right? That's the whole reason why people bitched and moaned about Beatty getting playing time because Escobar wasn't doing the job. Right? If Beatty's doing the job, you wouldn't hear no nonsense about Vientos at all. Even at the DH spot, if Vogelback was competent, you wouldn't hear about Vientos. The same thing that goes for any other prospect in general, right? The unknown is so much favored towards fans because the unknown can be great, can be better than what you currently have. But again, if the Mets would have kept Escobar and didn't trade Escobar, how much better was Beatty? The only thing that's different is age because Escobar overall had better numbers. And it's not like Beatty was here in September. He was here for most of the year. They brought him up quite early because Escobar was struggling. The numbers are not that far off. It's just that the age is different. And the unknown with Beatty is more appealing to fans in general. And I understand that. But you also have to take a step back and stop with these homegrown guys that you fall in love with for no reason at all. There is no reason to fall in love with Brett Beatty. I love his swing. But you know what? He's a completely different player from the minors to Major League Baseball. He's a different player. He catches the ball. He does right swing-wise, launch angle-wise in the minors. But when he gets to the majors, he hits ground balls. We can't have him hitting ground balls if they're not finding holes. He's not a 300 hitter. He's a guy that can hit 25 home runs. That's what we need from him. If he doesn't provides 15 home runs for us, that's not helping his team enough to what we need. And if you're not getting better defensively, you're a waste of time. And that's something. This is the evaluation part. And I believe Nelson said about the starting pitching prospects. All of them are not going to work out. You hope that one pans out, maybe two, and one to be at the elite level, because the rest of them are going to be in the trade when you need to, because you're going to have to use at least one of these top, prospect starting pitchers in a trade if they're willing to trade for a starting pitcher, at least this offseason or at the deadline. That's where the evaluation factor comes up. And I think that's where we are. So let's finish up on the left field options. We talked about Soler, Chris. he could be a left field option if the Mets get him. Maybe they do go with Vientos at DH. If you get Soler at left field, he's terrible outfielder, but I guess you can deal with it if he hits 36 home runs for the most part. Where are the Mets going with left field? Is Gilbert going to get an opportunity in spring training, which I'm okay with? You traded for him. Let's see what he can do. I'm okay with it. If he wins the job in spring training, I'm all on board. But it's not going to be Bellinger. I think we all agree on that. Where are they going in left field, Chris?
I wish I had the answer. This is probably the the hardest question of the New York Mets to try to figure out. I think more so than a DH, more so than any sort of starting pitching talk, left field and what they're going to do for left field is the absolute hardest question to answer. And quite frankly, I have no idea. Someone mentioned a Tommy Pham reunion up at the top of the comments. Honestly, if he didn't burn that bridge, I would have loved to see Tommy Pham back on a 1-year deal. That would have been perfect. But that bridge has long been burnt and he is not coming back. So what realistically do you do? Even if you sign Jorge Soler, I know he's an outfielder, but he's not going to be playing every day in left field for you, especially if you value defense at all. Jorge Soler is not touching your outfield. So what do you do? Drew Gilbert, as much as I'd love to see him up in spring training, kill it and make the opening day roster, I really don't think that's going to happen. That's my favorite prospect in the farm system. And with the way the Mets do business in terms of their minor league talent, I just cannot see that happening. You saw it last year with Brett Beatty, right? We all thought that Brett Beatty had the best chance at cracking that opening day roster. They sent his ass back down to the minor leagues. And honestly, I'm not sure if that's what hindered him, but he wasn't the same after that when he came back up. So yeah, absolutely. This is a really good question. DJ Stewart, you have DJ Stewart there. You have Tyrone Taylor there. A platoon of those two guys is simply not going to cut it. I think we all know that and understand that. But what realistic option do we have other than sort of platooning those two type guys? I mean, or if it's Drew Gilbert, what other options internally do you have? And that is not, there's nothing outside of that. So, like I said, Freddie Peralta, name to watch out. If you can get a Freddie Peralta and a Christian Yelich and eat his contract, that might be a play, although it's unrealistic because Christian Yelich, hit 19 home runs last season, 278 batting average, had a decent season. He's getting paid upwards of $23-24 million a year up until 2028, 2029. I don't see the Mets taking on that large of an investment for that long of a haul in Christian Yelich, right? If Christian Yelich was embodying anything close to what he was producing 2019 and before that, then maybe, but I just don't see that happening. So this is the grandest question of them all, and this has me personally stumped. I actually have no idea how to answer this, and this is one of the few times that I'm going to say that because Cody Bellinger's not an option. Jorge Soler's not going to fix that problem for you. I think we all know Teoscar Hernandez is not coming here. So what really do the Mets do? I know Young-Hoo Lee was a guy that the Mets were coveting, and knowing what we know now this offseason, they were never going to offer him 6 years for $113 million and what he got with the San Francisco Giants. So that was never an option. This problem to have in left field for the Mets couldn't have come at a more terrible time than right now, especially with what this market is. So if anyone else has any other good grand ideas for left field, I'm still in the drawing boards in terms of trying to answer that.
Yeah, I wish I can see the chat, but I can't. It's not working for me right now. But yeah, Nelson. I mean, and Chris, you brought up Dylan Cease. There's an outfielder for the White Sox that could be very useful, for us. Maybe they do make a big package trade for that type of package with the White Sox with Cease, and we all know that outfielder. We'll see. Nelson, what do you got on the left field option? Because I'm clueless at this point. I think right now I'd rather go with Drew Gilbert than DJ Stewart because I don't trust him. So what do you think, Nelson? Left field? I don't know.
Yeah, I also don't know. To add on to you guys, I don't see Drew Gilbert. The Mets are not that aggressive with their prospects. I don't think he's quite there yet. Maybe we'll see him later in the year, but I don't think we're going to see him at the start of the year. The Mauricio injury hurt because to me, Mauricio gave you an opportunity to at least play him at second. And if you were going to keep McNeil, then you could throw him out there. And that's right. Then you have in theory, have your left fielder. Now that's not an option. Now you have to play McNeil at second. And I don't think we have our left fielder in house. I mean, unless they really want to throw Tyrone Taylor out there as the everyday left fielder, I don't see him as an everyday left fielder. I think he's more of a fourth outfielder that rotates. DJ Stewart's not the guy. Could you see them sign Eddie Rosario? Maybe that's a possibility. If he's not great per se, but he could come here on a 1 or 2 year deal. I could see that. I won't completely write off a Teoscar Hernandez. I know that's not likely, but you never know if his market doesn't pan out. Maybe that's something you can pivot to. I wouldn't be mad at that. Obviously, it's not, like I said, not very likely. A name I've seen, Harrison Bader. I saw his name pop up.
He's hurt too much.
Yeah, I don't love him. He's hurt a lot. But at this point, the options aren't goreat. So you got to get somebody else, I think. I don't think they can not sign anybody. They have to have one more guy at least to compete, to maybe rotate, to platoon something. They pivot back to Michael A. Taylor. I don't think he signed yet. That was a guy that we were kind of in on before that Hauser Taylor trade. The only other option is a trade, like you said. Maybe there's another trade out there where you get a pitcher and an outfielder, or maybe just an outfielder. Who knows? But who that is, I don't know. I would love it. I mean, I don't see it because it would take a ton. I mean, huge package to get Cease and Robert from the White Sox. But man, if they could do that, that instantly take us into then we can stop talking about, are the Mets going to contend? I think that's, as long as you get health from those guys, then you're really in a good shape. But man, that's a lot to give. It's going to be a lot to give up. I think that's part of the reason we heard a lot of rumors about Dylan Cease to the Braves, and then they seem to have pivoted to that Chris Sale deal, because just Cease alone was going to cost a ton. So to get two guys, I don't know if that's going to happen. We'll see. I truly don't know. Anything they do, I'd be shocked, and I at the same time I could also be like, yeah, I guess I could see that. So who knows what happens? It's definitely a need. To me, you have to at least fill one of these. So you can't not sign a DH and a left fielder. You got to get one or the other, if not both. So I just hope Stearns. I want to see some creativity, man. Give me another creative deal like that Hauser deal. I love that Hauser deal.
Yeah.
Find me another creative trade and improve this roster, because right now, no, it's not. Right now, if you ask me, I'm thinking we're in high 70s, low 80s, maybe. We need a couple of additions at least to really get into the conversation about making playoffs.
Yeah, and we keep on bringing that Dylan Cease situation. And Chris, I know you're looking at the comments. Thank you for that, by the way. What about the Mets taking on the Andrew Benintendi contract with Dylan Cease? Would that help the trade package that goes back? Because he's a good defensive left fielder. He doesn't do much with the bat anymore. He's okay, but he's a really good defensive left fielder, and they gave him a ton of money. And the White Sox are in transition, not even in transition. They're like in rebuild mode, because they're going to probably try to trade Dylan Cease. Can you say to the White Sox, hey, we'll take the Benintendi contract instead of four top prospects, can we do three? What do you think?
You could do that, but my thing at that point is, I'd rather go the Yelich route and talk with the Brewers, to be honest with you, because if you're gonna he signed a 4 to 5 year deal, Benintendi did with the White Sox, I believe it was. That is just too much. What was it?
I think he did, yeah.
Yeah, it was like a 5-year deal, something like that. I think it's 5 for $75, if I remember correctly, that Benintendi signed with the White Sox. And my point is, if you're going to do that, 5 for $75, right? If you're going to do that, then you might as well just go out there and sign Teoscar Hernandez. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you might as well just sign Teoscar Hernandez and then look for another pitcher elsewhere. So that's my take on it. Like I said, I like where the idea of where you're going, but at that point, I'd rather just talk with the Brewers and try to get maybe a Freddie Peralta or preferably a Corbin Burns, right? I think we're both in on him.
Yeah.
But another name that I know I tossed out on this podcast a couple lives ago, I think it was when just me and you were doing it by ourselves here, was Lane Thomas. Now, listen, man, I know Lane Thomas is going to be a hell of an ask because he's just coming off of a 28 home run season, hitting 268 with the Washington Nationals, had two great back-to-back seasons in Washington. But I mean, how much does Washington value Lane Thomas? That's the actual kicker of the question. Like, where do they see themselves at as a franchise? Are they ready to compete within the next 2 years, or are they not? Because Lane Thomas has 2 years of arbitration left on his contract, and he's going to ask for a payday if he also replicates anything close to what he did last season with the Nationals. So if the Nationals can't see themselves competing, then I can't see them wanting to re-sign Lane Thomas to what he's going to want, and that can play directly into the Mets' hands. I just don't think that's going to happen this offseason since he has 2 more years of arbitration. Maybe that's something that happens next offseason, seeing what happens in 2024 with Lane Thomas. But that's an under-the-radar type name that I think a lot of people don't necessarily have at the forefront of their minds when talking about guys in the outfield. And not only is he an outfielder, he can play every single outfield position for you, not only left field. So above average arm, especially in the corner outfield spot right next to Nimmo. Lane Thomas is a name I'd look out after. I just don't think it's feasible or realistic to sort of state that this offseason and go after that this offseason. For one reason or another, I just wanted to get everybody's sort of minds flowing in the direction of sort of other options that might be on the table outside of your Yelich's, your Benintendis, your Teoscars, all that good stuff. So Lane Thomas is a name that I definitely like, and I definitely would watch out for Lane Thomas this season in 2024. If he starts off as a National, see what type of season he has, because he's a type of guy that you can add immediately in the 2025 offseason via trade. I know it's an in-division trade. It gets a little murky, but he's a type of bat that I would definitely love to add if it's next offseason. And I know that doesn't answer what we're going to do in this offseason, but like I said, I just genuinely do not know at this point.
Yeah, I think the Burns Yelich thing is a lot more plausible because of the fact that I think it's an easier get than the Cease, the Cease trade with an outfielder, or Angie Benintendi with a pitcher as well, with Cease as well. I just think that only because of the fact that I think the Mets can take a bad contract, and it could help the package overall. So, final thoughts for any of you guys. Anyone can just chime in here just to finish it up. Nelson, we'll start with you. Just finish it up. If you want to throw a bullpen into this, even though we didn't talk about bullpen much at all, give me your final thoughts, and we'll talk next time, guys.
Yeah, I mean, bullpen, who knows? At this point, I feel like we definitely need another back end guy. I've said all off season I thought that was going to come in a trade. We shall see. Obviously, we've signed a lot of projects for the bullpen, which I don't have a problem with, but I think you do need one guy that can be solid and consistent back there. So we'll see where that goes. Listen, I mean, we've talked about it. There's still holes to fill. Obviously, we need a starting pitcher, left fielder, DH, and bullpen arm. But I don't know if we fill all of those holes. Hopefully we do. But I mean, at this point, I just want something to happen. It's getting old, just regurgitating the same crap because there's really nothing to talk about because we haven't done anything substantial. Like it's all been like very minor league deals. I know there's a plan there. I know they're gonna get there. It's hard. It's hard. I'm pretty patient, and it's even hard for me to be patient at this point. It's like, give me something. I need something to talk about here. It's just, I don't know. It's just, it's very hard to go through the off season and just the same crap nothing's going on, no real news. I mean, at this point, I think you said it earlier, I'd take a deal for anybody. Like, just sign somewhere, somebody sign somewhere, right? Even if it's not with the Mets, just give us something to talk about. So anyways, it's a good show. It's amazing how crappy this offseason has been so far, but hopefully it gets better, and hopefully we'll be back with more to talk about. Appreciate everyone watching. Please, if you haven't, if you could go to subscribe to my channel, I'd really appreciate it. And obviously subscribe to the other guys as well. And we'll see you guys next time.
Absolutely. And yeah, and can anybody sign like not West Coast time, please? Like, I would like to be up while these guys sign or trades happen. Like, holy shit, like everything's West Coast time. Like, nobody cares about the West Coast. We don't care, right? You know, anything north, east, middle of the country, fine. But nobody cares. You sign at 8 p.m. West Coast time, and it's like 11:30, 12 o'clock at night any other time. But yeah, Chris, final thoughts. And if you want to throw in bullpen there for a quick second, go right ahead, man, and talk about your channel.
Yeah, man. I mean, honestly, I can get to the bullpen a different night. Honestly, this was already very challenging and a good show because it forced me and it challenged me to sort of look at this team in a different objective and a different light. And honestly, I think all Mets fans should be doing the same. Like, we all know what this offseason already is. We already seen at face value what the Mets are giving us and what they're willing to give us this offseason. We can sit there and complain about it, call the Mets a 75-win team, not making the playoffs, or we can talk about this team and how they put a competitive roster from here on out to the end of the offseason, and that's how we can do so. That's what I'm going to do. So I hope everyone in the chat is following my lead, but I definitely appreciate everyone tuning in. I appreciate all the comments. I like talking about this team in a sort of objective manner and sort of looking at all different avenues that this team can go down from now until the end of the offseason. Because like Nelson said earlier in the stream, like, this offseason is not nearly finished whatsoever. So we still got moves to make. Am I confident they're going to make all the moves, like Nelson said, and plug every single hole? I'm not confident in that, and I'm not banking on that. And I'm perfectly accepting if they don't do that, right? In hopes that they have a bigger plan in 2025 and beyond. And I know that takes patience. I understand it, but that's just what we have to deal with right now as Mets fans. And it's unfortunate, but it's what it's come to. So like I said, I appreciate everyone tuning in, hitting the chat, subscribing to everyone's channels. I know me personally, I'm almost on my way to 400 subscribers on the channel. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I would thoroughly appreciate it. Dropped a couple of videos today on my channel, 2 videos talking about Minaya and Ryu and why I prefer Minaya over Ryu. That was my later episode. In the earlier episode, it was a little bit of a more fun topic, talking about the Pete Alonso contract extension. And I appreciate you all and giving your insight and comments and input in the comment section, because like I said, when it comes to Pete Alonso, this fan base, there's no one size fits all. This fan base loves to debate on Pete Alonso and what the Mets should do with him. So it was a fun little topic and a nice little getaway from all the, I guess, fake reports and news that we've been seeing about the Mets so far, because they're linked to everybody and anybody, and there's no concrete information surrounding this team as of yet. But when there is, us 3 will keep you in the loop, and we'll come and talk about it on the channel, whether it's on the Mets Hot Stove Live, the True Mets Talk podcast, or the Interstate Mets Report. I thoroughly appreciate everybody, each and everybody in the chat, supporting the channel and supporting the stream. Let's go Mets, and until next time.
Absolutely. That is CP, New York Sports Network. Subscribe. And as Amish Country Mets fans, subscribe. Appreciate you guys always. I know we did a much longer hot stove than we normally do, but there was a lot of information that we wanted to roll out there and opinions that we had. And Chris and Nelson, thank you for looking at the chat, because it goes in and out on me, and I see like just a few randomly. So with that said, guys, thank you, Nelson. Thank you, Chris. And don't forget to subscribe to Hayden's channel as well. He couldn't be with us, but he will be shortly. Soon we all get the crew back together again. So once again, another Mets Hot Stove in the books. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. Have a great night. Chris, Nelson, thank you very much. See you next time, guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, Rob. Let's go Mets.
They're cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets. All the fans are true to the orange and blue.